Yippee-Ki-Yay, Mr. Falcon.
Laundry list. So we have another follow-up to our second ever laundry list episode. If you'll remember, this is where I get Tom to watch stuff with his very limited watching stuff time. It's just me recommending things and hoping that he doesn't hate what I recommend. So this time it was End of Watch, the buddy cop movie that's not a buddy cop movie from 2012. Tom has watched it. He watched the End of Watch.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, not to get ahead of ourselves, but you still gonna let me recommend movies to you, or did you hate it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I loved it. I loved it.
Sweet.
Yeah, and
Sweet.
Here's like you said earlier, you had
Awesome.
you had some help on this one. In that, part of the reason that the window is so small is because typically the stuff I'm trying to watch is like weird or niche or old. Or like I'm a so bad it's good kind of guy, so I'll watch stuff that's just awful because I find some entertainment in it, and so that means like.
And I'm guessing not everyone in your house is the same.
Correct. Usually it's
Right
like,
on.
hey, you want to watch this? No, absolutely not. It's like, okay, laundry day it is, and then but I mentioned this particular suggestion, and my wife was like, oh, when are you watching that? I'll watch that with you. I was like, oh, okay. So this isn't really even like a launch. This is like prime time. This is like this was an after the kids go to bed and just regular like date night movie. So
You didn't have to watch it alone on the toilet on your phone.
yeah, precisely. Or like I didn't have to like pause it 3 times to go change the from the washer to the dryer, and start folding clothes. I got to like just watch the whole thing all the way through.
All right, so date night with Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Peña.
Yeah, man.
Did you ever find out why your wife was so into it? Did she say? She just wanted to watch it.
She'd seen it.
That's cool.
She'd seen it.
Oh, okay. Oh, so she was steering you too then.
She had seen it. She remembered liking it. And I was like, oh, well, what's good about it? And she was like, I don't really remember that much about it. I remember that I liked it, and I remember that I cried. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's a good combination.
Because
Usually.
in your analysis, you put the term buddy cop movie on it. And so I can't think of a buddy cop movie at the end of which I cried at. You know what I mean? Like those two things kind of don't gel.
Look, man, if you don't cry at the end of Lethal Weapon, I don't know what the fuck you are, but you're not human. I'm kidding.
Boy.
I mean, the dog. There's a bit with the dog and the.
Yeah.
Shut up, man. It's a Christmas movie.
Oh boy, here we go.
No, End of Watch is horribly sad at the end. I told you it was going to be sad. It was going to be sadder.
And man, I was not ready for that. I started to steel myself for like some kind of tragedy that was coming, but I don't think I was ready for the gut punch that we got at the end of that movie.
Brutal. Yeah, spoiler alert. I mean, the movie's like over 10 years old, so fair warning, whatever, but we're going to talk about the ending. So in the script, apparently in the original script, they both die.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
In that, oh, God.
That would have been, it was bad. I don't know. Like, it's pretty bad seeing him alone without Mike.
I think that's worse.
Yeah, like that might be worse. Like if they both went, nobody's there to be sad in the movie.
Yeah.
Right? But Brian being alone with without Mike and with Mike's widow and newborn kid and having just gotten married and he got all shot up, like you don't know how well he's going to recover. He can barely walk. It might be a measure sadder.
I think that's worse. I think if they both die, like that on paper, is like a worse outcome. But in terms of how it makes you feel, because then like who's there to sell it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, nothing against Anna Kendrick, but like, I didn't spend a whole movie getting attached to her. I spent a whole movie getting attached to fucking Brian and Z. Like the dynamic duo. Oh God.
Her and Gyllenhaal had some chemistry though that felt good. Like that whole relationship in the movie felt really natural, I thought.
Yeah, there was one scene like I want to come back to. Just remind me about like, and I forget her name in the movie. Her ridiculous she commits like
Janet.
Janet, a grievous violation, big time violation. But
okay,
we'll get back to that.
Okay,
like the relationship you get between Brian and Z. Oh man, like it's just.
I told you that the banter was a big deal, and I don't think I oversold it because I watched it again since, and yeah, man, it's just so naturally conversational and real, and a lot of the movie is them sitting in a car talking to each other, so it has to be good, or the movie's it's just not gonna work.
You know what I like though about that too,
what?
Is that they're not just talking to each other; they're talking shit to each other.
Yes, exactly.
And the one scene, I was laughing my ass off when they're both doing impressions of each other. When Jake Gyllenhaal's doing his, he's like, "Oh yeah, we got my cousin's
sister's quinceañera, my cousin's quinceañera.
my cousin's quinceañera.
I know exactly what you're talking
my nephew's
about.
Quinceañera, and then I got to go to this other quinceañera, and then, like he has Michael Peña.
Hey bro, did you see this new kind of coffee
I really
got?
like coffee.
Did you see? Fuck you, dude. You like coffee?
That was perfect. Like, but that's what you do. I mean, I worked in an environment where I was with a couple of guys constantly,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
40 hours a week. I see them more than I see my kids, and like that's the type of. Now we're not driving the streets of LA. We were in a meat locker, but it's that same type of environment where you're with these dudes and you get really comfortable. So you say some awful shit.
You say some of the most horrible shit, like that you wouldn't even write down on the internet.
Right. I will not repeat it here, but man.
You can't even remember it. Like you have to kind of erase it from your mind as soon as it's spoken because it would not be funny at any other time. It would just be horrifying.
It's what's the word? It's like ephemeral,
Ephemeral. Yeah. That's the word.
It's here and then it's gone. and it existed. And if you were there for it, it was great, but then like boom, it's gone forever.
And I think like it's just that it's not that part of it isn't really about being police or any specific profession. It's just when dudes are working together and spend most of their waking hours together doing something they don't want to be doing, and they're not assholes. It's just what happens. Like I've had a lot of jobs. One of them I spent a lot of time riding around in a city truck. Talking a lot like this. I've worked on the line in kitchens, and the shit you hear in a kitchen, man, holy Christ. And I'm not talking like, even shit that this wasn't even the caliber of the bear. Like I'm talking just grody ass fucking just line cooked, cranking out cheesesteaks and fries and shit, like you meet the weirdest fucking people in a kitchen. And yeah, it's just that breaking balls, dude. That's just that and not every part of the country has that in their culture, though.
Right.
In the Northeast, it's absolutely a thing, and I know the West Coast, it's definitely a thing. Just because there's so many East Coast transplants in the West.
Yeah.
But man, it's just something. It's a
breaking
relationship. Breaking balls, man. Breaking balls. It's something that's really hard to write.
Yeah,
like in a script.
When you put it that way.
Something about it, it always comes out a little fake, unless there's like a shtick to throw on top of it. Like it's a mafia movie, so they kind of all talk like gangsters, and it, that softens it a little bit when it's strictly written. But to really get it, you have to let the actors do what they have to. You have to let them improv a little bit. Like, think about Goodfellas, the classic. What am I, a clown? I'm here to amuse you scene with Joe Pesci and Ray Liotta.
Yeah.
That was improv.
Oh, yeah,
It was
that makes sense.
it was a story that Joe Pesci used to tell, and so the legend goes, Scorsese heard him tell it one time, and he always remembered it. And when they were shooting the scene, he told him just to tell the story.
Do the thing.
Nobody but Ray Liotta knew this was going to happen. Nobody else in the scene knew that he was going to do this. So their reaction when he gets pissed off, they're not really sure. Like, they're not really sure if this is Joe Pesci getting pissed off or if he's in character. Because it's not in the script, and they weren't improvising a lot. So all of a sudden he goes off on this tangent, and Joe Pesci was kind of a connected guy when his family and everything. If you read about him, like, you know, he's from that world.
Oh,
So all the other actors being all kind of, the fuck is going on, man? Like, but it helped the energy of the whole scene so much.
That scene's iconic.
Yeah, and it gave Ray Liotta something to play off of, you know, but you know, that's a breaking ball scene. Like, it's a joke. It's a joke, and like you need some kind of spontaneity to make that work. And that made the ending of this movie so much sadder because it felt like you spent more time with these guys than you actually did, I think, in the end.
Well, yeah. And then the big kicker. Well, number one, like you could see it coming because they keep like upping the personal stakes for everybody. Like, oh, Z's married, Brian's got a girlfriend, Z's wife is pregnant, and they have
Brian gets married.
They have the baby.
Yeah.
Brian gets married.
And at the same time, at work, they keep doing progressively more dangerous shit and uncovering more awful shit.
Yeah.
So
and
you definitely feel
coming.
the build.
But then when it happens, it's like, yeah, I think the fact that Brian lives, number one, like you get to see him, like you have that pain on the screen. And from the one guy who you know is going to feel it more than anybody, but also like to know, like I always looked at it as like, you know, like Z died. And like part of me thinks like that's the reason he's literally on top of them when they get shot. So he takes, and they kind of allude to it a little bit. You mentioned Frank Grillo.
Yeah,
and that,
right.
That
At
speech,
the wedding,
he says he took my bullet. That was supposed to be my bullet, and he took it. And like I think that was like kind of, you know, that was your clue that like oh crap, like one of them's going to take a bullet. And I think Z takes his bullet. Whatever one should have killed him, Z took it. And yeah, and that's that. Like
that, and it also bookends something else too, because when they go into that house fire to save those kids, which is an awesome scene.
That's gnarly.
And I want to tell you something, a trivia thing I learned about that. The movie's insurer wouldn't let them use real fire in that scene. So everything you see is just lights and smoke.
Really?
There's no actual fire when they're crawling around on the ground and shit.
Yeah, that looked really good.
You don't even notice because he kept all the shots so tight, and the lighting and the smoke was so thick. You just don't notice that you never actually see any flames.
That looked
the only time you see flames are as soon as they're coming out of the front door of the house, which is a different set.
Yeah.
So, but after that, they're in that convenience store. And like a couple days later or whatever, talking about it.
Oh, he's like, yeah, follow me into the house.
Exactly, as a metaphor for following him into this investigation that Brian wants to go into, and there's this weird cartel shit that they stumbled into, right? And doing that, following him into that investigation, almost gets Z killed, and just like following him into the fire, almost got Brian killed, except everything was bigger. And Z doesn't make it. Ugh. And that makes it even worse because you know Brian's blaming himself because he survived.
Yeah. And you know what?
You know he's blaming himself.
Oh, yeah. He's going to carry that shit wherever he goes. He goes
in more ways than one. Just like for letting Z die in the firefight, you know, not being able to protect him physically during the fire, and also because he's the one who got them mixed up in all this shit.
Yeah. And as sad as that is, like you could have ended that movie right there when he goes to eulogize him, and all he can get out is, he was my brother. That's all he can muster. And like I feel like the fact that he couldn't give like a big speech. He couldn't do it. It was too painful. Like that gave you like a big gut punch. But the thing that hit even harder is the very last scene when they're doing that one last little vignette of them in the car, and like it's just the same kind of funny banter you got through like all the other car scenes. But he says something to him that like that really gets me. It got me when he's telling that story, and he goes, "I didn't even tell my wife this story." And you like right there on the screen, like those two are so close that here's this thing that he won't tell anyone else but his partner. And it's just like they're in the last scene, they're showing you just how close these two are. No one is as close as to Z as Brian, and it just made the scene before like that much heavier. And it's like, oh God, like what a way to go out. It was
that peek back at once everything falls apart, the look back at when it was all together, that'll get you.
Man.
You know, that'll get you every time. And I think the multiple cameras, that idea that the footage you see is from a bunch of different cameras lent itself to that tacking on that last scene without it being cheesy.
Oh man. And you know what too? The camera thing, I bet you if I'd seen that movie, I'm watching this movie in a very different place than when it was filmed. If I saw that when it came out, I probably would have felt like, you know, a little bit like out of sorts with the way it was filmed. But like now that we are in the age of the body cam, none of that shit looks out of place at all.
Yep. I think we talked about that a little bit too. And yeah, I looked it up. The LAPD was actually using body cams at the time voluntarily. I don't know if all LAPD officers were, but they were in use.
They're
in
like
the LAPD.
ubiquitous now.
Yeah, well, since all the happenings during the pandemic and whatnot, pretty much every large police department that could afford it, just for their own liability, started using them. So yeah, you were just accustomed to seeing that bobbing chest footage, that chest camera footage, but that was pretty, even, and technologically back then, getting the kind of resolution they needed for a movie from cameras that small, they had to actually build the cameras that they used for the footage for this movie. So, I mean, you know, it was a little bit ahead of its time, I guess, in that way, but it worked. It worked, and it didn't feel like a found footage movie.
No, you know what? If anything, because of like when it was filmed, like normally that kind of stuff will make a movie like dated, but in this case, it makes it feel like prescient. Like they saw what was coming, and that movie I think like fits better now than it did when it came out.
Yeah, like if they made it now, instead of Brian having that camcorder, he would just be doing it all with his phone.
Yeah, you'd change a couple lines of dialogue to kind of like fix that issue, but yeah, that movie like the way it's filmed makes more sense now than it did when they filmed it. It's weird.
Word.
Yeah, you don't normally see something kind of like being ahead of things like that. Usually it's getting dated in some way.
And like a lot of times with the found footage movies, they limit themselves exclusively to so-called found footage because that's the gimmick, right? So the scenes that should be shot with real cameras, with real camera angles, they can't because it would be breaking the gimmick. Well, this movie just kind of uses the handhelds and stuff as accents and fillers.
Yeah,
you know, for certain scenes, but for the shootout, when they need to shoot the shootout, they shoot it with like a movie. You know, they still use handhelds, but you can tell that, all right, this is the movie camera now. You know, this is the omniscient, you know, third person movie camera, and it works really well. Like David Ayer, the director, really balanced it out, I think.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't feel forced.
And then it allowed him to add footage of things like the wedding, which feels like somebody's shitty wedding video.
Yeah, like a videographer.
You know? Yeah, but it feels real. Like, again, it makes it feel like a real wedding. The only thing breaking the illusion is that it's fucking Jake Gyllenhaal and Anna Kendrick.
Right.
But in 20 years, kids aren't going to know who that is. They watch
Right. That's
and
the
it's
guy
gonna
from
feel-
Roadhouse.
it. That fucking. All right. So if you're listening to this, the remake of Roadhouse just came out this week when we're recording this with Jake Gyllenhaal, and I feel strongly about the time I wasted watching that fucking
See,
thing.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I'm not gonna ruin it for you, but if anything, you should watch it just for how goddamn weird it is.
I'm gonna watch it.
Like story structure wise, the motivation of the characters, the morality of the movie is so bizarre that it's worth studying just for that. That's all I really have to say. I don't want to dwell on it. That and Conor McGregor cannot act.
The guy can barely talk.
He was physically impressive, but it was something you'll note. He's like 5'9", right? Like he's not a tall dude.
Yeah.
Right? Well, they shoot him in this movie and they make him look like he's 6'2", the way they shoot him. Like these low angles and everything, like they make him look gigantic in this movie.
I mean, he
And I'm
can
like,
pack
"Hey."
on a lot of muscle.
Yeah, but it ain't going to make him, like, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you
Like,
mean.
but I had to look it up. I'm like, I thought he was like even shorter than me. And yeah, he is.
He'll still kick your ass though.
Oh, I know. Absolutely.
Eat your lunch.
He got fucking huge since he stopped. Since he got he hurt his foot.
Well, he doesn't
right?
have to cut weight anymore. He's not fighting.
Right. Like when I remember when he was fighting, he hurt his foot real bad, and then he got jacked, and then he retired, right? And then he got even more jacked. His shoulders he's fucking huge, man. He looks weird. Like he looks top heavy.
Well,
And
yeah.
he walks he walks like he has a pineapple in his ass through this whole movie. And it makes him look like he's top heavy, like almost like it's just so strange. And he's naked a lot. Like it's fucking weird,
Interesting.
man. It's so weird. It's so fucking just strange. Just
Did he used to fuck guys like you in prison?
dude, he doesn't say it.
It's probably better that way.
I don't know, man. I was everything. Once this whole shit train started moving, I was kind of looking forward to hearing that in his weird accent. Weird. I mean, he's from Dublin. But it's fucking weird to me from Jersey. It sounds.
I used
not
to
what
fuck guys like you in prison.
Right? Yeah, that's kind of. It's not what I think of as like an Irish accent, and I thought I was an asshole, but no, it's just very just like the English accent in different parts of London. So
Does anyone say that they'll be nice until it's time to not be nice?
no, and nobody says pain don't hurt.
What the shit? Why even remake that movie then?
I don't
Come
know,
on.
dude. And there's no like Sam Elliott-esque character. They changed everything that they could possibly think to change.
shit.
I don't even know why they didn't just make it some kind of a sequel or something. It's just I don't even know, dude. I don't even know what to say.
Is the bad guy as like happy-go-lucky and like namby-pamby as Ben Gazzara?
The bad guy is so fucking lame. The bad guy is technically the real bad guy's son, and you never actually meet the bad guy because he's in prison, and his dickbag son is running the business, and it's so murky. Like there's an implication that he's involved in organized crime, and he has like armed goons for some reason, but all he really seems to be is a guy with money who's buying up a bunch of property to build a resort. Like that's the whole plot. And
Doesn't seem that bad.
The bar is the only property that won't sell out for what I'm sure is millions of dollars. And he keeps sending people into the bar to break pool cues and be rowdy because they won't sell to him. And then at some point, this becomes motivation for just straight up murder. Like Jake Gyllenhaal is like this Dalton. He's an absolute sociopath. Like he's insane. He admits it. He's fucking crazy, dude. And Dalton kills a couple people in the original, but if you remember, that's all after Sam Elliott dies.
Right.
And
He
that's
grabs
like-
that
that's
guy's
like-
neck out of his neck.
Yeah, yeah, and that dude was asking for it, but like the line gets crossed, you know,
Yeah.
and then he starts like wasting fools, you know, and he doesn't even waste the head bad dude at the end until he absolutely has to, or no, she shoots him, right, or
No,
somebody.
he pulls his throat out.
No, the fucking
Ben
Fantasy
Gazzara.
Island guy.
Yeah.
Jackie Treehorn. man. Jackie fucking Treehorn. And he dresses like that and has a Jackie Treehorn-esque house. Like, it's an amazing... See, the premise of Roadhouse is absurd to start with. So the only way it works is if everyone involved is oddly committed. And like
To how
Patrick
ridiculous
Swayze,
it is.
yeah, and like the idea that there's this, I don't know, black market of elite bouncers, coolers, man, that'll reform all the bars that are completely plagued with brawls, because you can still have that in the 21st century. I mean, I've seen videos, people fight all the time in public, but you know, if a bar gets known for being a fighting spot, the cops will shut it down unless it's in the most remotest of places, which is what you think of when you think of a roadhouse, right? You think of like
Middle of nowhere.
Some shithole with truckers and motorcycles, right? And just, yeah, rowdy, a band. Well, this place it's like a tiki bar in the Florida Keys on the beach. Like, one side doesn't even have a wall. It's just like outside. And you know what it's called? The name of the bar?
The Roadhouse?
Yeah. It's called the Roadhouse. That's why the movie's called Roadhouse, because that's the name of the bar in this movie.
I mean,
So it's not really a roadhouse. It's just like a
beach house?
beach bar named Roadhouse.
Well, would anyone have gone to see the beach house?
Maybe that's what they should have called it, Ken's Beach House. And they should have cast the Gosling
The Gosling.
instead of the Gyllenhaal.
Oh, man.
But whatever, he was really good in this. And
Wait.
throughout Roadhouse, you get, yeah.
Okay,
He
I
was
thought we
good
were
in
back to-
Roadhouse. Like, it's so weird. It's like Gyllenhaal's acting in a different movie than you're watching.
Everyone
he's
else
off in
got
some-
a different script.
Yeah, he's off in some weird like sequel to Nightcrawler where he's like a sociopath who has the ability to kill anyone he wants with his hands, but has to keep himself restrained all the time until someone does something horrible, like burns down a bookstore, and then he just starts murdering people and feeding them to crocodiles and shit. He doesn't actually feed the guy. That's just one of the more random things that happens in the movie. A crocodile just eats somebody.
Oh, an alligator.
No, I looked this up because they call it a crocodile like 4 fucking times.
In Florida?
I'm like, in the Keys. Apparently, the Florida Keys are within the northernmost range of crocodiles.
What?
Yeah, the crocodiles that are in Central America and shit.
That's just crazy.
I looked it up, man. I don't know. I thought the same thing, but I looked it up. But yeah, why do it? It's confusing. Americans are not. We don't. Who people are don't know that shit if you're not from Florida. I guess. I sure didn't. It just seemed weird, like a mistake. But it
yeah.
was hardly the strangest thing in this fucking thing. But Gyllenhaal was funny in this like psychotic way, and then the rest of the movie is like a G.I. Joe cartoon. It's bizarre. But I will say, you talked about the funeral scene. In a lesser movie with a shittier actor, that scene would have been really, really corny.
The funeral?
Yes. Yes. Like if you got some like mid-range actor up there pretending to cry, talking about, he was my brother, you know, like it could be really goofy. But Gyllenhaal acted the shit out of that scene.
Yeah, he pulls it off.
And it was like, okay, so you mentioned the speech from Frank Grillo at the wedding. Like, was the rest of it? That was a hell of a scene, right?
Yeah. You could tell he's hammered.
Right? He looks really drunk. He's got that
looks
like glassy eye.
shit.
and he looks sallow.
Yeah, his yeah, good word. His eyes are like all bloodshot. He's got like that vein popping out of his head. His eyes are all glassed over, and he looks like he's about
that
to
was a war
slash his
story.
beer. And like,
That was,
and
those
all
young Marines looking at him in awe, like, "What the fuck, man?"
But like, I don't even think that they're looking at him with like respect. They're just like quietly and respectfully listening to him like tell that story.
I agree.
I don't think there's any what do you call it? Like they're not judging him. They're just sitting there listening with like rapt attention.
I just got the impression that like, they cast really young-looking actors for that, and they look like it's like to me they only show their faces really quick, and to me I always talk it like it's a look of awe and kind of surprised that they're getting a war story from a cop, you know?
Yeah.
Because it seems like they seem like they've heard something like that before. I don't know. The camera work was really great in that scene. They were able to convey a whole lot. I just love that scene.
It's a great scene.
I'm trying to think anything else that stands out. The fire scene always gets me. The scenes where they discover, the chopped up dead bodies and shit. Like
God, that shit was
pretty
gnarly.
wild.
And like the pickle
wild.
jars, right? There's like a bunch of pickle jars full of drugs.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the same house, right?
Yeah, and they find there's two houses. There's the first one they find.
The human traffickers.
Yeah, with the people behind the fence and whatnot, with the buckets of shit. And that's the one where the Fed comes up to them and gives them a rash of shit for blowing their investigation. Is that what they were?
Yeah, they were ICE.
That dude talks like a fucking cop. That guy. I know he was not an actor. There's no way he was an actor.
Yeah.
The Fed.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, like the way he talks. You had brought up, and I noticed this because you brought it up. Like they talk in, like the main characters, Brian and Z, talk in like three distinct voices, and that's one of the things that they do to other people when they're being like cops.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet
absolutely.
they're cops, either interacting with the public or interacting with like their superiors, and it's all like very professional cop speak. Then there's like the banter in the car where they're talking to each other, and they're just dudes, at work. And then it's like when the shit is happening, and they go into like tactical mode. Like when they're chasing somebody, he's like, all right, light him up. Okay, go. All right, you got him. And they're just in it. And then even I just remember when they're looking for that scene when they find David Harbour with a knife sticking out of his head, and they're looking.
Yeah, and the rookie cop screaming on the radio and shit.
They know she's nearby, and they're like canvassing the area.
Yeah, but she couldn't say exactly where she was, and that was
I remember
great.
Jake Gyllenhaal just going, okay, all right, you're good. Okay, push, go. And he's just like it's all like very calm and tactical. And I remember thinking like, wow, it's just like, it's a whole third voice that these guys speak in,
Yeah, and he's got more of a military edge to him too, Brian, because he's supposed to be an ex-Marine. So he always takes charge in any like potential tactical situation. It seems, and it's consistent through the movie, and it's the same way in the last shootout too.
Oh yeah,
because Z's never been shot at that much, and you get the feeling Brian has a couple times because he's able to keep a cooler head, and he's able to actually figure out what they should do next.
Dude, he got shot in the hand already. He took a bullet.
Yeah,
and he's still just okay. We need to establish a base of fire. He's just giving them like.
See, the one thing I never understood about that ending. And I couldn't talk to you about this, of course, until you saw it. But when they're running around in the alleys and shit, right? At one point, they get shot at by a guy in a pickup truck, and Brian shoots him and puts him down. It always struck me as weird that being in the situation they were in, why didn't they just pull that fucker out of the pickup truck and drive that bitch out of there?
Yeah.
That always sat weird with me. And there's two vehicles they come across that are like running, that instead they just keep jogging on foot with guys with AKs waiting for them around every corner potentially, and they're like out of ammo, and they end up getting shot to shit. That's just something that always. I mean, you don't know. Maybe you don't notice it on the first watch because everything's moving so fast.
But on the end of watch,
yeah. Well, back to the thing about how they talk. I always thought the guy who played the captain, Captain Reese, I always thought that he had to be some kind of technical advisor or something because he just talked too much like a cop. Like he had that cadence, that tone.
Yeah.
And it's like it's something that higher ranking cops have too. It's different from what street cops have when they talk to the public or anyone else. Like it's this officious, like it's authoritative, but on the edge of friendly and super matter of fact, right? And
with like the fuck you right underneath.
Kinda like, yeah, there's like a sarcasm almost to everything there's a part where after they bust that dude with the money in the soup pot.
Oh, and Liberace's AK?
Right. And they're back at the office doing paperwork, and the captain comes over to take a look at the gun, and Z says, he calls it Liberace's AK, and he's like, looks like Liberace's AK. And it's like that thing where they just repeat back what the fuck you just said. You know, it's kind of like a dick waggle or something. I don't know what to call it, but he nails it so perfectly. So I looked him up after we did that last episode. His name was Jamie Fitzsimmons. And yeah, he's a real cop. He was 20 years on the LAPD. He's been a technical advisor and played bit parts in a few movies.
He's like a consultant.
Yeah, well, like being out in LA, I guess, you know, it's right there, right? I found this article in Police Mag from when the movie, I guess it was from when it first came out, and it said that he now oversees the patrol operations of the Summit County Sheriff's Office in Colorado. So I don't know if that's current or not, but at some point he did. But it said when he was in the LAPD, he worked the 77th, Southwest, Rampart, and Wilshire divisions, which are hardcore spots, man.
Oh, boy.
And apparently some of the things from the script were from his career. Like he ended up getting kind of tight with David Ayer, and he put some of his anecdotes in there. And that area is where he patrolled.
Wow.
So, yeah. Yeah, he was also the technical advisor on Street Kings, that movie Ayer did with Keanu Reeves.
I never saw that.
Yeah, you got to check that one out with Forrest Whitaker. And Captain America.
Chris Evans?
Yeah, when he's young, much younger, Chris Evans.
That sounds cool.
It's really similar to Dark Blue.
I love Dark Blue.
Yeah, it's just, not set in the 90s. It's just later. But a lot of similarities. But he didn't even write that. The guy who wrote, I'm going to forget his name, but the guy who wrote L.A. Confidential, the novel that L.A. Confidential is based on, and Black Dahlia, the one with
Josh Hartnett?
Josh Hartnett, very good.
And Aaron Eckhart.
Two-Face. Aaron Eckhart, yes, Two-Face. Aaron Eckhart.
I'm good at this game.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So he wrote those books, and then he wrote a more contemporary cop story, and that became Street Kings. But it's really similar to the other stuff David Ayer's done, which is weird. But I guess this movie kind of balances it out because he's done, like he did Training Day, he did Dark Blue, Street Kings, and they're all about corrupt cops in L.A. And then, these guys are, Brian and Z are essentially good cops.
They're straight as can be.
Straight arrows, man. Straight arrows in every way possible.
But
and they get their dicks rocked for it.
And as much as like, you might think it's more compelling for like a dirty cop movie, but it just makes it so much more of a punch when these guys go down.
It stands out too because of that.
They do they do everything. They're just good guys.
And they're not old enough to be like washed up they're not drunks. They're home. They seem to be good to the people in their lives, their family, and everything. So it's a different flavor of cop movie than you're used to seeing in the past. I'd say 20 years. You don't see too many straight-laced cops. Are in this movie. Cops are the good guys, so I did leave you with a warning.
Oh boy.
About this movie. The one thing that you might not like.
Well, yeah, it's not a perfect movie. There's some warts.
So the big wart, I guess, the bad guys, the gangbangers, they were kind of goofy, right?
Oh yeah, they're like completely fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh man, and like not for nothing too. Like number one, I remember you warned me about all the fuck words. And that, my God, there were a lot. But I feel like half of them came from that group of people, to the point where it was like you couldn't take anything what they were saying seriously. Like, you fucking hear me? I tell you to fucking kill the guy. You better fucking go fuck kill. And I was like, he said 10 words, and 6 of them were fucks. And I was like, there's nothing there. And yeah, they were a little. That girl with the hat, she sucked. And then they called the guy, what is it, Big Evil?
Big Evil, because his evil's big.
Why do they call you Big Evil? My
evil's big.
My evil's big. That was real goofy. And like, like it kind of works in a way though that
you kind of hate them though.
They're so over the top that like you have no trouble hating them. You can't draw any sort of like.
You can't imagine there's anything redeemable about them.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
It's off screen, like they just seem like they're assholes all the time.
Sometimes you can say like, well, they're motivated by this, and they're doing this for this reason, and there's the motivation is they're gangbangers in a cartel. They don't give them.
On top of that, they're connected to the cartel who's trafficking people and chopping other people up and stacking them in a house.
Yeah, it was
in Wilshire. So, yeah. I mean, it works in that way, but they are kind of cartoonish, man. It's really hard to get past sometimes.
And when they go down at the end in that final shootout with the rest of those cops, there's no. Even if they didn't raise their guns to the cops, like the cops, that was a good shoot. They presented a firearm to the cops. They're going to try to shoot them. So you have to open fire at that point. But even if they didn't, as the audience, you probably wouldn't have too much of a problem with watching them all go down after what they did to Brian and Z.
Especially the corny ass shit that the one says both times.
They were so egregious.
Rest in piss. That's great, man.
Good one.
That's great. Good one, man. Yeah, I hold firm to the opinion that they tried to film the scenes with the gangbangers the same way they did Mike and the same way they did Ryan and Z, but they just weren't good enough actors to pull it off. And I think one of them, you see the guy with the big ass nose. You've seen in a few things. He alternately plays a Mexican or a terrorist from Middle Eastern descent. So he's been in some things, but the others I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else.
No.
So, and I know the one with the hat. Was somebody in the L.A. Mexican music scene for a while, I think. But they're not professional actors, let alone great actors.
No.
Who can just vamp and improvise. So it came off really cheesy and cartoonish. I think it's just the weakest part of the movie. Otherwise, it's a pretty great flick. But what else? Any other warts?
It's one of the few. That's one of the few things that took me out of it. As far as I don't know, man. It bothered me for multiple reasons, and one of them is it's Anna Kendrick. Okay, she plays Janet.
Yeah.
She's great. She's his girlfriend. And there's the one scene that bothered me the most was when like she spends the night with him, and they wake up, and he's still sleeping.
Oh.
Right? And two things are happening. Number one, she picks up his camera, and it just felt like a forced way to put her into that like same gimmick, because that was Brian's gimmick, was that he was doing the thing for his film class, so he has a reason to speak directly to the camera, and that scene seemed like a reason to just let Anna Kendrick do that, right? And like, I don't know, it felt a little forced, and I was like, okay, now it's her turn to talk to the camera and make it even more like documentary style, and like I don't know if I like that very much, and then on top of that, she does two things, man. She goes through his wallet, and it's like looking at, number one, I don't know why he had numbers written down on a piece of paper instead of just in his cell phone. But like still, like
this is the cell phone era.
Like you're dating a guy.
Flip phones, but
like you're like number one. That was kind of weird that she goes through his wallet, but then she picks up his fucking gun. And it's just
the gun
like
comes first, yeah.
Yeah, but oh yeah, whatever. Like that's I'm for dramatic effect. I'm saving that for last.
I understand.
She picks up his fucking revolver. I don't know. I don't think that was his service weapon, but still,
no, it's his backup piece. It's hammerless.
I did notice that as
J-frame.
hammerless revolver. Yeah.
Yeah, he probably wears it on his ankle or something.
Anyhow, she's like, I've never shot one of these. You should take me to shoot one for our next date or something like that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
she says like maybe our next date.
You clearly like she admits to never having, fired a gun, which probably alludes to the fact that she's also never handled one, but like still feels okay to just pick one up and wave it around. It's like, what?
She I get it.
Like,
yeah.
what are you
she doesn't
doing?
She doesn't do too bad. Like she completely stays away from the trigger and she doesn't point the barrel at her fucking head.
I understand that. Yeah.
I mean, she does okay, but yeah, it is a little weird. It always struck she says something like, "I'm just naturally curious," and it's like, "I'm so cute that you're not gonna mind that I go through your fucking wallet while you're sleeping." And she throws out his numbers too, his chick numbers.
Yeah. You won't need these anymore.
She's like, Raquel?
And like,
I don't know. Like, yeah.
There's something funny about that, but that scene, I don't know. Like, I felt like that was the only other thing that like kind of took me out of what was happening. Everything else was like entirely believable. And
I always felt like it made her a little nutty, but it never hit me that way. It never took me out of it because I always thought it like she sees him playing with the camera and talking to it all the time, so she figured she'd leave him like a little love note thing.
I get it. Yeah, it's
I know.
cutesy.
But if it rang false to you, I get it. I can see that too. I can see that too.
I think I would have had less a problem with it if she didn't pick up his gun. Like, ooh, what's this?
Yeah. Every time I'm ready for her to point it at herself and like look down the barrel. I don't know why. It just feels like she's going to, but she never does. But it never changes. The movie never changes no matter how many times I watch it. Well, that's not too bad.
No, there's a ton to like. There's very little about it that I don't like. I do have a question though. I mean, yeah, I know, like, we live in, like we said earlier, we live in the age of the body cam and everything's filmed. But can you film your, like, shift for personal purposes as a police officer? Like, if, let's say tomorrow, an officer tried to do what he did in that movie, could they do that at all? Not just, like, physically, but, like, would they be allowed to do that by the force?
I mean, I'm sure every department has rules about it. If not, it's probably up to a superior. But I mean, I would imagine the rules are something like the department owns whatever footage they shoot, as if it was body cam footage, and they control who gets it and if it's released or not, because I mean, I don't know. It could get kind of murky.
Yeah.
Because I mean, technically it would be public information unless it's part of an ongoing investigation. But I mean, a police department can keep things confidential for a number of reasons.
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think it would honestly be up to each department. And I think now, with body cams being so common, most police departments probably have a policy that they didn't have when this movie was made. Because how many
Yeah.
cops would actually want to do something like that? But I know, I mean, you know,
In all those scenarios, though, I would imagine like they own the camera, and so it would
Yeah.
be a lot easier to claim ownership of the footage. But it's his camera. I don't know. Like,
yeah, they would probably get in trouble if they ever showed it to anyone. Is the thing.
so
Like, and especially like now, if they put it on the internet, they would get in trouble without the department's permission. Because, and also, just because the people in it who aren't police officers are just regular citizens, like they
Yeah.
would have to have a release. Like it would be they'd be opening themselves, especially if they're shown doing illegal shit or anything like that, or getting arrested or anything embarrassing. Like they could be opening themselves up to lawsuits if they did anything public with it. But in that day and age, when YouTube was still kind of beyond most regular people's reach, and he wasn't planning to show it to anyone, but it was his film class, right? His teacher. I don't know. I mean, he probably wouldn't have gotten in trouble for it, but
yeah,
it's murky.
I'll say this: it required like an active decision to suspend your disbelief at the beginning of the movie. You had like I kind of had to say to myself, like, okay, I'm just gonna assume that like, yeah, he could do this, and then you can once you do that, you can proceed from there, and it's a great movie. But like the set,
I think they tried it. They address it a couple times, right? I mean,
no,
he gets yelled at for having the camera.
no one wants him to do it. He gets yelled at a
Yeah.
bunch. Are you filming? And then the one
Yeah,
like
and Van Houser files a complaint or wants to or something, and the captain has to talk to him.
right, but he does talk to him, and then nothing happens. He just keeps filming. You know, and then like the detectives show up when they find that van, the van that was used in the drive-by.
Yeah, that's early
They're like,
on.
Are you
Yeah,
filming this? You know, and then it just again, it kind of like is a reminder that like, yeah, he's probably not supposed to do any of this, but it's the crux on which most of the footage rests, like why they even
Yeah.
have that. So it's a
I think that was the essay from the filmmakers, right? Like it's like we know this is a little off the reservation, and this probably wouldn't fly, but you know we're gonna have people give him shit about it a couple times
yeah.
as appeasement, you know.
But you can, now having said that, you can, decide like, yeah, I'm not going to make this an issue in my head, and I'm just going to enjoy this movie. And when you do that,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
awesome.
If you think of the alternative, I think the alternative is that they did something really, really dumb, like have cameramen from a show like Cops, following these two cops around, like
Cops,
the
the movie.
alternatives, yeah, to show what they showed. Also, I don't think, and there is any other solution because you needed there to be no camera person for the banter scenes. Like they need to be alone.
Yeah.
In the movie for that to work. So yeah, I mean, it's a concept, and I think it was about the best that it could be, the way it was done.
It's
a gimmick for sure, but
yeah, it's definitely a
gonna do?
gimmick. But again, it works. Like it's one of those risks that you have to just take, and then people go with it. They say, okay, yeah, I'll make the decision to watch this and take it as it is. And yeah, when you do that, it's awesome. It paid off.
All right, cool. So second laundry list was a success.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll have to think of something else to talk you into watching. But
And again,
I'm
man,
glad you liked End to Watch.
like I value your opinion, and if you tell me to watch something, I'm gonna watch it eventually. But like the list is
Priority.
long. The list is long now. Like
It's about priorities.
we gotta start this is like triage. What gets bumped to the front?
When you get there, I think you should see any David Ayer movies that you haven't seen yet, except the most recent few that he's made.
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, like that. And I tried to watch that newest one. I think it's his newest, The Beekeeper, with Jason Statham.
Yeah.
I don't know. My mind just drifted away, and I turned it off at some point. It was really boring.
You know what? I'll say this, man. I knew of End of Watch when it first came out, and I can't say what it was that made me just. I had no interest. I saw the previews or the trailer or whatever, and I was like, okay, yeah, cops, Jake Gyllenhaal. It was before I really dug what he was doing. I hadn't seen Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler was awesome. I saw Zodiac.
Nightcrawler was
That was
fantastic.
awesome. I hadn't seen any of that stuff yet. And I was like, yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal, cops, who cares? It didn't tick any boxes for me at the time. And so I think if you hadn't made this suggestion, it never would have occurred to me oh, I remember when this came out. Maybe I'll watch that. I never would have seen this movie ever.
All right, good.
If you didn't kind of put it out there. So,
There's the value.
yeah, man, this would have been
What
just
we
lost
do.
to the ages for me anyway.
I feel like it was the same way for me, which makes me think that this movie wasn't marketed very well.
No, I
'Cause
don't think it was.
remember. Yeah, I don't really remember. I do remember hearing about it. I don't. Yeah, same thing. I don't really remember having any desire to see it. And I just, I watch things randomly because
Oh, yeah,
I always
you
watch
devour
movies all the
movies, man.
time. I can't be alone with my thoughts for too long. But it was just one of those ones. By the time it came around, it was on cable or something. I like you said, I'd seen Zodiac and Nightcrawler. I'm like, oh, it's Gyllenhaal. I guess I'll give it a shot. Michael Peña's funny. And yeah, that's it. I remember seeing it. I was late at night. I couldn't sleep. Put it on. Was completely floored by how much I liked it and how hard the ending hit. So yeah, I always kept it in my back pocket there. I'm glad you liked
That's
it, man.
a good one, man. Yeah.
Glad I didn't ruin your date night.
No, that was a good one. It's kind of funny too. It's I'll mention a movie to you. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Have you seen this? Have you heard of this? And then one of, for example, Iron Claw, the Iron Claw, right? I mentioned
Yeah,
it. Hey man, you seen the Iron Claw? And you're like, what's that? Is that a movie? It's like, yeah, it's that movie about this. You're like, oh yeah, I heard about that. And then several hours later, I get a message. I thought it was pretty good. It was weirdly paced, and then you give me a report. I'm like, you watched it already? What the hell? You just learned of it.
Well,
Its existence 3 hours earlier. It was like you put it on immediately.